All right, welcome back, the Genius. Okay, so in this section, we'll be talking about nested loops. Okay, we'll be talking about nested loops in JavaScript. And while we are on it, we just have to understand now, in as much as I have really touched these things in previous sections when I was talking about do while loops and the for loops. But if you really understand how the nested loops works in JavaScript, it will really go a long way helping you because there will be situations where you need to work with nested loops and we need to understand better how it works. Okay, so let's take a look at it in this session. All right. So nested loops in JavaScript involve placing one loop inside another. All right. Remember, we have been dealing with one loop, like the for loop, the do while loop, the while loop. Okay. So nested loop has to do with you placing another loop inside another one. Okay. Placing a loop inside another one. And this structure is useful when dealing with multidimensional data structures or scenarios requiring iteration over complex patterns such as grids, matrices, and hierarchical data. Now, there will be basically, let's say you're working with data from the database and you have nested documents. Let's say you're working with MongoDB, you have nested documents like that. So if you want to reach out to the nested document, you might want to be using nested loops. Okay, so we are going to see more examples on how. We're also going to see exercises. We'll do exercises on how this thing works. So we're going to see it in practical, how these things work. So when is it useful? When is it needed? Okay, so why are you even learning it? You're going to see the reason why you would need it because they all come. As an experienced programmer, I have seen it. Okay, you're still going to see it because you're going to be developing real big applications and you're going to see all these things. So understanding and efficiently using nested loops will enhance your problem solving and algorithm development skills in JavaScript. So basically, as a programmer, as a developer, our job is to, they give us an ideal problem, all right? We will now solve it using software. So there will be cases where you have one particular problem to solve and you don't know how to go about it. And if you have these skills, all right, if you understand how these things work, I can really remember where I use these nested loops. Yes, I can really remember where I used it when I was working with the combo courses in this platform. Okay, so now it is needed. All right, if you understand this efficiently, know how to use it efficiently, it will enhance your problem solving and algorithm development skills. Now, as problem solvers that we are, the more skills you have, the better you tackle problems and the more efficient you tackle the problems. The more efficient, the more you provide more efficient solutions to problems. So you need to have a lot of these skills, know how they are, how to use them. Okay. So now, how nested loops work? Let's see. A nested loop executes the inner loop completely for every iteration of the outer loop. Remember what we mean by iteration. A loop's iteration means that it will execute all the code inside of each block. That is one iteration. It goes back again. I have shown you this thing, especially when I'm doing these previous sessions. I showed you how an iteration goes. Okay, I had to debug the code so that you can see how these things work step by step. So after executing the block of code of the loop, it will go back to the loop, do the increment. After the increment, it will check. If it's a for loop, it will check the condition, come back again. If it's a while loop, it will go and check the condition and stuff like that. So that's an iteration. So for a nested loop, the inner loop completely, let's say now the outer loop has 5 iterations and the inner loop has 3 iterations. It means that for every iteration of the outer loop, the inner loop will run 3 times. So the inner loop will complete all of its iteration for the outer loop. So I'm going to show you exactly how it is, okay? So look at it. In this for loop, we have the inner loop, the first for loop. And here, this block of code, first of all, we are consoling this message. And after that, we are running another loop inside of it. So what it means is that for every iteration of this outer loop, all right, please, if you don't understand what I mean by iteration, watch the previous videos. And if you don't, please reach out to me, okay? All right. So for every iteration of the outer loop, the inner loop would run. Do you understand that? And the inner loop will run completely. It will run completely for every iteration. So it's here now we have the outer loop is going to run 3 times. All right. So for the first iteration of the outer loop, the inner loop will run 2 times. If you watch, we are saying j less than 3. Okay, so the outer loop will run 4 times, 4 iterations because it is starting from 0. Okay, sorry, it will run 3 times because 0, 1, 2. 2 is less than 3. 3 is not less than 3. So it will run 3 times. This one would also run 2 times. So the inner loop will run 2 times for every iteration of the outer loop. Okay, so let me explain. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so I'll create another file, nested loop. Okay, so we are saying that for every iteration of the outer loop, the inner loop would run. Okay, so let's see. For let I equal to 0, I less than 3, I plus plus. Okay, so and we now have, okay, I will say console.log. And what I will just say, I will just say starting. Okay. Remember, always use your your template literal to start your string. That's also a habit I'm also forming. So I will say starting um starting outer loop. Starting outer loop iteration iteration 1. Now, because it's going to start from 0, I will now say I plus 1. Now, what am I doing here? I don't want it to. My iteration will start with 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's not going to be 0, but remember this thing will start from 0. So since I want to print the number of iteration, I'm not doing I plus 1, which is 0 plus 1 will be 1. 1 plus 1 will be 2. So that's how the iteration is going to go. So now I will now say this is the inner loop. I will say let j equal to 0, j less than 2, and I'll do j plus plus. And simply, what am I going to do here? I'll just console.log, and I will say I this, and j is this. Okay, so I'm just going to run it. After running it now, I'm going to debug it so that we'll see it step by step. So I'll run without debugging. Okay, so now look at what it printed out. Let me expand this. Look at what it printed out here. It says starting outer loop, iteration 1. Okay, so this is the first iteration. So in this first iteration, you can see that this, now look at this code here is what we are having here, 1, 2. You can see for every iteration, for every outer loop iteration, we are running the inner loop 2 times because the inner loop iteration is 2. So we are running it 2 times. You can see. So the outer loop runs 3 times. The inner loop runs 2 times. For every iteration, the inner loop runs 2 times according to the number of iterations. So let us debug. Let's debug and see. Let me show you how this thing. Oops, what happened? All right. Okay, so now we are here. So when I click next, you see this has been printed out. Okay, the first iteration has started. So I will go on here. Now you can see the inner loop is running. The first iteration of the inner loop has run. The second iteration will now run again. Do you understand? Now this is the second iteration. So after this one, look at what is going to happen. It's now going to go back to the second iteration of the outer loop. You can see it has gone back because it has, for every iteration, we have run the first iteration of the outer loop, and it has run all the code inside of the outer loop. And some of the code we have there is the iteration of the for loop. So it has completed it. You can see that is what we have here. Starting outer loop iteration 1, we have I is 0, j is 0, I is 0, j is 1. So that's what we have here. So when we go again, okay, we enter the second iteration. You see, iteration 2 has started. Okay, so we go again. The iterations for the inner loop will complete before it goes back to the next iteration of the outer loop. Do you understand? Look at how it's working. Okay, so right now we are now starting the iteration 3. So that is how it works. After completing, it will go to the outer loop. Then, because that's the last iteration of the outer loop, it would end. Okay, you can see it is out of it now. So that is how it works. Okay, so I believe you understand that. So what are the key concepts? Okay, what are the key concepts of outer loop? The outer loop controls the number of times the inner loop executes fully. You can see, all right? I want to explain this thing we just said here. The outer loop controls the number of times the inner loop executes fully. Now, what it means is this. When you go, look at this, okay? This is our inner loop, all right? All right? And you can see that our inner loop ran how many times? 1, 2, 3. It ran 3 times. And these 3 times is because of the outer loop has 3 iterations. So the outer loop controls the number of times the inner loop runs completely. So you can see now the inner loop, we had 2 iterations, and that's what we had there. We printed this thing 2 times. Okay, and this inner loop ran 3 times because the outer loop controlled the number of times. And it actually depends on number of iteration of the outer loop. So the outer loop controls the number of times the inner loop executes fully. The inner loop completes its entire iteration cycle each time the outer loop iterates. So the inner loop would always run completely, all right, before the outer loop, next iteration of the outer loop continues again. So you have already seen it. I've shown you practical how these things work, step by step, how they work. So if you don't understand it, please don't hesitate to reach out, all right? Always, there is a chat button by the bottom right corner of your screen. Just click on it. You're going to be chatting me up right away. Do you understand? Okay, so just click on that and you would chat me. You get to my DM. So what are the common use cases? Now, working with dimensional arrays. Okay, so now look at this. In as much as we have not talked about arrays, okay, we'll talk about array in later chapters, but this is one way we use the nested loop. You can see that this array has nested arrays. So how do we now, let's say now we want to iterate these guys, the inner arrays. That means the outer array will be the outer loop and the inner arrays will be the inner loop. So if you have something like this, okay, you can see now the matrix is the first, that is the first one we are going for. And now I wouldn't know how to explain this because we have not talked about arrays, but I don't know if this will cause more confusion. That is why I like to teach concept before concept, but it doesn't really matter here. We needed to talk about loop before we even talk about array, because when we start talking about array, we'll be talking a lot about loops. So we need to understand how loops work before we talk about arrays. But if you look at this now, just understand that this is the outer loop and this is the inner loop. So instead of say I less than 3 or I less than 5 that we used to do, we are saying matrix.length. Do you understand? We are working on the length of this. Okay, we are working on the length. So don't worry if you don't understand this code, and I'm not going to explain it because I might bring more confusion to some people who don't understand what arrays are. But don't worry, when we start talking about arrays, we'll talk about multidimensional arrays and we'll talk about how to loop through them. Okay, that's okay. All right. So generating patterns. So this is now, because we have, this is a simple example we can do and everybody would understand. Now look at it. We have rows for 5 and we are saying we want to print stars. Okay, we want to print stars 5 times. So what we are doing here is this. This is the outer loop. We are going to run this outer loop 5 times because the rows here is 5. Okay, we are going to run it 5 times. And inside, for every iteration, we are declaring an empty string as a star. And then we are now creating a new star and we are consoling. So let's go to code. I will try to get what they have because that's not my code. So now let me show you what we are doing here. They want to create according to what they have in that code. Okay. I will say constant rows. I will just explain as much as I can. All right. And instead of I starting at 0, I is starting at 1. And instead of I less than 3, we are going to say less than or equal to 5, less than or equal to the number of rows that we have. So after that, okay, they are creating a variable called star, less star equal to an empty string. So the thing is this, for every iteration, they are changing the star value. Okay, for every iteration, they are changing the star value because inside of this, they are actually doing something else. So now, let j equal to 1 and j less than I. Okay, so now let j equal to 1. The thing is this, I am not the owner of this code, so I don't really understand what is the rationale behind what the program they are going to write, but I will just try to explain the code as much as I can. So they are saying less than or equal to I believe so, sorry, that's I. And okay, so then, now look at what they are trying to do here. So let me see what they are consoling, they are creating stars and adding star to it. Okay, so star is equal to plus equal to this. Okay. And after that, they are consoling star. So, like I said, I'm not the owner of this code, but I'm going to explain it to you. But this is somehow how, so here we are now printing star. Okay. So here, if we run this, and this is the pattern we are going to create. I run without debugging. This is the pattern we are going to create. You see? All right, so star is being created. This is the pattern. So for the first iteration, star is just 1. Second iteration, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is what it looks like. So when you want to create patterns like this is how you go about it. Okay, so I could actually solve the same problem another way. All right, I could actually solve it another way. I could actually solve it in another way. So how can I solve it in another way? So let me show you. Since I want to do it 5 times, anyways, the solution I want to provide that will not show you nested loops. Okay, the solution I want to provide will not show you nested loops, so there will be no need. So let's go with this. Here we are trying to explain using nested loops, but in as much as we are tempted to use nested loop, whenever you're solving a problem, you should use the best algorithm, the best solution to that problem. For me, instead of doing this, I could actually do something like this. Okay, let me just write my own code. I could just say for let I equal to, let's say 1, and I less than equal to 5 because I want to print it 5 times. And I will say I plus plus, okay? So what I could do here is this. For every iteration, I just want to console.log. Now, console.log. Remember we talked about string. I could just say, what do I want to print out? I want to print this dot repeat. Remember when we did that repeat stuff? So repeat I times. So look at what is going to happen here. I think this is another solution to this is the pattern they want to create. So let's see whether we get it. I'm not too sure of this code. All right, you can see it's identical. Look at my own under. My own is the under. So okay, I can comment this one out so that we don't get confused. All right. So the thing is this: in as much as we are supposed to be using loops, nested loops, always find a better way. If you can see now, I'm still creating the same pattern. And this is when you have nested loop would be bad for performance. And I have already solved the same problem using another solution that does not involve nested loops. Okay, so you can see, but this is actually better now. It solved the same problem and it will run faster. Okay, so we are still going to talk about it. All right, we're going to talk about it so you can see. Now, when we say become a professional, you guys don't understand it. by the grace of God, okay, it's because of my skills, the level of skill that I have, that I am able to recreate. I didn't know what these guys wanted to do. They had their own code, but I have written it in another way. That shows that you know what you're doing. Okay, I get me so worried when people say, I want a 3 months course, I want a 2 months course, 6 months is too long. The thing is this, the course is long because of the content. And you can see how we take our time to teach you. Imagine that I'm rushing this course now. I will not even point out all these things for you. And that makes you a better programmer for you to know all these things and understand all these things. So stop being in a hurry. Stop being half-baked. You want to rush. Where are you rushing to? The end goal is that you become good, you get a good job, you start developing applications for people collecting money. But if you don't know these things, you cannot even make the money, you cannot collect the money. So mellow down, calm down, and learn. Okay? And thank God that you have us. The Global Genius have your back. We are here for your interest. We have your interest at heart. That is why we are taking our time to teach you. So stop being in a hurry, okay? All right. So you can see, generating patterns is another way you can use the nested loops, but I also showed another way you can do it without nested loops. So now let's talk about performance consideration, because nested loops can actually be bad, all right, if you don't use it very well, okay? Nested loops can become computationally expensive if not optimized, as the time complexity increases significantly. Now, let me show you what this thing means, okay? We have not talked about performance, but let me show you. You can see that this my solution here, all right? It only ran 5 times. My solution here ran 5 times. But you can see this one, this guy ran 5 times. He ran 1, then the second time 2, then the second time 3, the second time 4, the second time 5. So you can see that the number, your performance, your application is more performant when you're running a particular program with less number of executions. I don't know if you would understand what I'm saying, but just get to that. The lesser code you write, the less. Now look at what I mean. This is a line of code that will be executed by the computer. All right, just one here. All right, so this guy will run 5 executions. You see, this pattern that was created here was just 5 executions that produced it. But this one would run 5 times the inner loop. How many times the inner loop runs? You can see it's more. If this inner loop runs 2 times, that means it will be 5 times 2, which is 10. All right. So you can see it will execute more instruction than this other one I have here. So nested loops can become computationally expensive if not optimized. Don't worry, in the advanced JavaScript, we're going to talk about performance optimization and stuff like that. You're going to understand better. Okay, but for now, understand that when you're using nested loops, this is what it looks like. The outer loop times inner loop. So number of times the outer loop runs times the inner loop. So when we talk about algorithms, you're going to understand what this big O notation means, okay? But I'm not going to mention it. This is not cause confusion. In the advanced course for JavaScript, you're going to be learning that, okay? So example of potential bottleneck. It can cause bottleneck. Imagine you're running this thing 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times. Come on now, you see, this small code here is running 1,000,000 times. It's not performant. Okay, so you cannot be running applications like that. If you're doing this thing, your application would be on hold until this whole application runs. I'm not going to talk too much about this. We'll talk about it in performance optimization. That's where we talk about this, and we'll get to understand this better. But using nested loops can be dangerous. Okay, so avoid unnecessary iteration. Just avoid it. You can see how I avoided the other code they gave us in the example. I actually created another solution to that, okay? So use break and continue to exit loops early when conditions are met. Okay, so when a particular condition is met, you can just break or use the loop statement that we discussed earlier to get something better. Leverage more efficient data structures or algorithms. Don't worry, we're going to talk about data structures and algorithm. And if you're wondering, I believe that, some of you, whenever we talk to you about our course, you'll be like, I already know it. Somebody told me yesterday, what is it that you're going to teach that I don't know? Is it JavaScript? Is it React.js? Is it I just laughed at that guy because the thing is this, if you even know it, you know that it's not easy to know it. So you don't even talk carelessly like that, number one. And secondly, that guy knows nothing. I can be very sure of that. So I'm sure that some of you don't know what data structures and algorithm is. And that is one of the things we're also going to be teaching you in this course. So you don't take this course for granted. We are here to equip you. Let me tell you the reasons why I want our students to be masters in everything we do. In February this year, 2024, I lost a job interview because of a $24,000 job. $24,000 job. I lost it because data structures and algorithm. I was not paying close attention to it. I was not taking it seriously. Nobody taught me, and I didn't learn it. I just knew that there are things called data structures and algorithm, but I have not really paid attention to it to master it. That's how I lost a $24,000 job. Check it, convert it in Naira to see how much I lost. And that is what I don't want my students to lose. And that is why we are taking our time to teach you. So learn, okay? All right. So how do you control nested loops? You can control nested loop using the loop statement, the break, the continue. You already know all these things, okay? So this is how you control them. So what are the best practices for using nested loops? Minimize the nesting depth. The more depth you have, the more executions of instructions and the more less performant it becomes. Too many nested loops can make the code hard to read and maintain. Refactor complex logic into functions where possible. Combine loops with when feasible. Some tasks can be performed with fewer loops by combining operations or restructuring. And the thing is that you cannot do all these things if you don't have these skills. You can't. Imagine that I do not know how to use the repeat method on strings. Imagine that I do not know that method. I wouldn't have created this solution in another way and a better performance solution for that matter. So that is why you need to learn. The more skills you have, the better programmer you are, the better applications you write, and that is it. And that is how you will stand out. That is how you get big jobs, okay? So you can also use MapReduce or for each for cleaner code. Don't worry. When we talk about arrays, we are going to talk about all these methods, and we're going to talk about arrays methods, and we're going to explain all of them, okay? So this, whenever you're working with arrays, always use the map, the reduce, the for each for better code. The thing is that in as much as you can use nested loop, only use nested loops when you don't have any other option, okay? So let us see some examples. Let us print. I don't want this class to be too long, but I'm still going to let us print our multiplication table. Let me show you one example of using nested loop. Let us print multiplication table. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to delete everything I have here. So I want to print multiplication table. You know, our multiplication table starts from 2 times 1, 2, 2 times 2, 4. Okay, something like that. So I say let I equal to 2, because we are starting at 2. We are not starting at 1 or 0. All right. I'll say I less than or equal to what? 12. 2 times the multiplication table stops at 12. And I will say I plus plus. Okay. Then the inner loop, because for every, let's say 2 times 1, 2, 2 times 2, 4, you understand? So I would also have to loop through the other ones to get the, now I will now say let j equal to 1, because 2 times 1, that means it will start from 1, j less than or equal to 12, because it starts at 12, and I'll say j plus plus. Now you can use any alphabet you like. It must not be I and j. You can use any alphabet you like. So I can now say console.log. I will say I times j is equal to, I will now put my template, I'll put the expression. I will now say I times j. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let's see what we are going to get. Okay, so if I run this code now, okay, so let's see our timetable printed out here. Okay, so let's go down and see. Okay, you can see. Okay, let me do something. Here. So after doing this thing, I would want to put something to demarcate. console.log. I want to demarcate. I will say, sorry, I will just use this to demarcate. Okay. And I don't know if this would work, this new line character. Let's see. Or I just want a new line character. Let me see. I don't know if this would work. Let's see. Console.log. I just want a new line character. Okay, so that we can have space in between them. Don't mind that I do not have semicolon. You always end with semicolon, please. That's a good practice. Okay, so if I run this now, so let us see what we have here. So ladies and gentlemen, this is our timetable. Okay, so sorry. Now it doesn't make sense here. So instead of saying I here, I will just say 2 times 1. So I will say, I will use this because I want to print out the value. 2 times, then I will do this so that I will print 2 times I. So, sorry, not 2. It's supposed to be I and J. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry. So it's supposed to be I and J. Ladies and gentlemen, programming is very sweet. If you're very good with programming, it's so sweet. I'm telling you. It's so sweet. The things you can do, you can be very, very proud of yourself. So I derive so much joy in doing this. Okay, so you can see now, this is our timetable. All right, 2 times 1, 2, 2 times 2, 4, 2 times 3, 6, 2 times 4, 8, right? Ladies and gentlemen, this is our timetable. And it goes down till, because we are stopping at 12, right? And this is it. 2 times the timetable multiplication, and this is what we have. So you can see we have already solved, we just solved the problem now using the nested loop. Somebody asked us to print the timetable for them, and we have just done that, which is amazing. All right. So another way you can also do when you are processing nested objects, okay? So I'm not going to do this. I want you to do it yourself, okay? Look at the code, all right? I want you to write this code yourself, okay? This is an example. Data, although this is an array, no problem if you don't get it. We have not discussed about array, so maybe when we talk about arrays, definitely we are going to talk about this multidimensional nested objects or stuff like that. So we're going to talk about it. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where I will stop the class. Thank you very much. Please, if you need to reach out to me or reach out to us, please, the chat button at the right corner of your screen, right bottom corner of your screen, hit it and you will chat us up, okay? Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next session.